The autumn mist clings to the towering spires of Belmont Manor like secrets refusing to be told. Behind these ancient stone walls, where portraits of long-dead nobility gaze down with knowing eyes, lies a mystery that would make even the most seasoned observers of high society tremble with anticipation. Allow me to draw back the velvet curtains of this tale, for I have witnessed what transpires when grief transforms a man's heart into something far more dangerous than love itself. What you are about to discover will challenge everything you believe about devotion, identity, and the lengths one will go to resurrect the dead. The year is 1847, and Count Adrian Belmont stands alone in his magnificent library, surrounded by leather-bound volumes that hold less mystery than the torment written across his aristocratic features. 3 years have passed since his beloved wife, Countess Isabella, perished in that tragic carriage accident, yet her absence haunts every corner of this grand estate like an unquiet spirit. The Count's dark hair, once meticulously groomed for society gatherings, now falls carelessly across his brow. His emerald eyes, which once sparkled with the confidence of inherited privilege, have dimmed to the color of storm clouds. The black mourning attire he refuses to abandon serves as a constant reminder of his loss, while his servants whisper that he speaks to empty chairs as if the Countess still occupies them. "Your lordship," announces Jameson, the elderly butler whose loyalty spans 3 decades of service to the Belmont lineage. His silver hair gleams in the candlelight as he enters with the measured steps of a man who has learned to navigate his master's unpredictable moods. "The estate manager requires your attention regarding the harvest accounts." Count Belmont does not lift his gaze from the oil painting above the marble fireplace. A portrait of Isabella in her wedding gown, her sapphire eyes seeming to follow his every movement. The artist had captured her with remarkable skill. Golden curls framing a heart-shaped face, lips curved in the gentlest smile, and an expression of such pure joy that it seems cruel for her to remain forever happy while her husband drowns in perpetual sorrow. "Tell Morrison the accounts can wait," the Count replies, his voice carrying the refined accent of the highest nobility, yet hollow with grief. "Nothing in this world requires my immediate attention anymore." Jameson's weathered face creases with concern. He has watched this young man transform from a vibrant air full of promise into a reclusive shadow of his former self. "Perhaps a ride through the countryside, my lord? The fresh air might." "Nothing will restore what has been taken from me, Jameson." The Count's fingers tighten around his brandy glass, the crystal threatening to shatter under the pressure. "She was everything, my light, my purpose, my very reason for drawing breath. Without Isabella, this entire estate, this title, my very existence holds no meaning." The butler bows respectfully, understanding that some wounds cut too deep for conventional healing. As he turns to leave, a commotion erupts from the direction of the servants' entrance. Raised voices, hurried footsteps, and what sounds distinctly like Morrison, the estate manager, engaged in heated discussion with someone unexpected. "Sir, you cannot simply walk onto private property demanding employment." Morrison's authoritative voice echoes through the corridors. "This is Count Belmont's estate, not some common farm seeking seasonal laborers." A younger voice responds with surprising eloquence despite evident fatigue. "I understand the impropriety of my approach, sir, but I have traveled many miles seeking honest work. I possess skills in groundskeeping, stable maintenance, and general estate management. Surely there exists some position, however modest, that might suit my qualifications." Count Belmont's head snaps up, his entire body tensing as if struck by lightning. That voice, something about its cadence, its gentle authority mixed with humility, sends an impossible chill down his spine. He sets down his brandy with trembling hands and moves toward the library doors, drawn by an inexplicable compulsion. Jameson hurries to follow his master, recognizing the dangerous gleam that has suddenly ignited in the Count's eyes. Through the grand foyer, past the twin staircases that curve like elegant swans' necks toward the upper floors, they find Morrison standing near the servants' entrance with his back rigidly straight, blocking the view of whoever seeks employment. "Morrison, step aside," commands Count Belmont, his voice carrying an authority that has been absent for months. The estate manager immediately complies, revealing the person who has caused such an unusual disturbance. What Count Belmont sees stops his heart completely, causing him to grip the doorframe for support lest he collapse from the shock. Standing before him, dressed in simple traveling clothes dusty from the road, is a young person whose resemblance to his deceased wife defies all rational explanation. The same golden curls, though shorter and less refined. The same heart-shaped face, though leaner from obvious hardship. the same sapphire blue eyes that seem to hold starlight within their depths. Even the posture, straight back despite evident fatigue, mirrors Isabella's natural grace. I beg your pardon for this intrusion, your lordship," the young stranger says, offering a bow that demonstrates familiarity with proper etiquette despite modest circumstances. "I am Cameron Thorne, recently arrived from Yorkshire. I seek only honest employment and ask nothing more than the opportunity to prove my worth through diligent service." Count Belmont cannot speak, cannot breathe, cannot process what his eyes insist is impossible. This young person, this Cameron Thorne, appears as if Isabella herself has returned from beyond the grave, transformed yet unmistakably familiar. The voice carries the same musical quality, though deeper. The mannerisms echo his wife's natural elegance, though tinged with the humility of someone accustomed to working for survival rather than commanding others' service. Your name," the Count manages to whisper, his voice barely audible. "Cameron Thorne, you said?" "Yes, your lordship. I am. I was apprenticed to the head groundskeeper at Ashford Estate until recent unfortunate circumstances required my departure. I have letters of recommendation, though I fear they may not suffice given my current appearance." Morrison steps forward, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. "My lord, perhaps we should continue this discussion at a more appropriate time. The young man appears weary from travel and—" "No!" Count Belmont's voice cuts through the air with startling intensity. "Cameron Thorne, you will join our household staff immediately. Jameson will provide you with quarters in the main house, not the servants' cottages. You will report directly to me regarding your duties." Both Morrison and Jameson exchange alarmed glances. Never in their years of service have they witnessed their master make such an impulsive decision, particularly regarding a complete stranger whose credentials remain unverified. Cameron's eyes widen with surprise and gratitude. "Your lordship, I am deeply honored by your generosity, but surely such accommodation exceeds what my position warrants. I require only modest lodging suitable for—" "You will accept what I offer," the Count interrupts, his gaze never leaving Cameron's face. "Your duties will include personal assistance with estate matters that require my direct attention. We will discuss the specifics tomorrow morning in my private study." As Cameron nods in acceptance, Count Belmont feels something stirring within his chest that he feared had died with Isabella. Hope, dangerous and desperate hope that perhaps the gods have granted him a second chance at happiness, even if it comes in an unexpected form. But as he watches this mysterious young person being led away by a bewildered Jameson, Count Belmont fails to notice the shadow that briefly darkens Cameron's expression, or the way those familiar sapphire eyes hold secrets that run far deeper than mere resemblance to a dead woman. What forces of fate have delivered this enigmatic stranger to Belmont Manor's doorstep? And what hidden truths lie beneath Cameron Thorne's carefully humble exterior? The answers to these questions will test every assumption about love, identity, and the dangerous game of replacing the irreplaceable. For in the corridors of Belmont Manor, where every portrait watches and every whisper echoes, nothing is ever quite what it appears to be. Dawn breaks over Belmont Manor with the soft radiance of spun gold, filtering through the diamond-paned windows of the Blue Chamber, where Cameron Thorne has spent a sleepless night contemplating the extraordinary turn of fortune that brought them to these luxurious surroundings. The room itself speaks of wealth beyond imagination. Silk damask wallpaper in azure and cream, furniture crafted from the finest mahogany, and a four-poster bed that could easily accommodate a family of 5. Yet despite these opulent accommodations, Cameron sits rigidly on the edge of the velvet-upholstered chair, fully dressed in the same travel-worn clothing from yesterday. The weight of deception presses heavily upon slender shoulders, for the resemblance to the late Countess is no mere coincidence of nature. It is a carefully cultivated disguise born of desperate necessity. 3 soft knocks at the chamber door interrupt these troubled thoughts. "Mr. Thorne," calls a gentle feminine voice. "I am Sarah, her late ladyship's former personal maid. His lordship has requested that I assist with your preparations for the morning meeting." Cameron opens the door to find a woman in her 30s with kind brown eyes and graying hair neatly arranged beneath a starched white cap. Sarah's expression reveals nothing but professional courtesy, though her gaze lingers curiously on Cameron's face with something approaching recognition. "His lordship has instructed me to provide you with appropriate attire," Sarah continues, gesturing toward a collection of garments draped over her arm. "These belong to, well, they require minor alterations, but they should serve admirably until proper measurements can be taken for new clothing." The garments Sarah presents cause Cameron's breath to catch in surprise. These are not the simple wool breeches and linen shirts appropriate for a groundskeeper, but rather the fine clothing of a gentleman. Silk waistcoats embroidered with silver thread, tailored jackets in rich burgundy and forest green, and trousers cut from the finest wool. Everything speaks of wealth, status, and a social position far above that of household staff. Surely there has been some mistake, Cameron protests, fingering the exquisite fabric with obvious reluctance. I am employed as ground staff, not whatever position these clothes would suggest. Sarah's expression grows thoughtful, her experienced eyes taking in details that others might miss. His lordship's instructions were quite specific, Mr. Thorne. You are to be dressed appropriately for your new position as his personal assistant in estate management, a position that requires you to accompany him to social gatherings, business meetings, and other functions where appearance reflects directly upon the Belmont family reputation. As Cameron reluctantly accepts the fine clothing, Sarah's demeanor shifts subtly. Her voice drops to a whisper barely audible above the crackling of the chamber's fireplace. If I may speak candidly, Mr. Thorne, your resemblance to our late Countess is quite remarkable. Perhaps too remarkable for mere coincidence. The words hang in the air like a challenge, causing Cameron's carefully maintained composure to falter for just an instant. I'm certain I don't understand your meaning, Sarah. Of course not, Sarah replies with a knowing smile that suggests she understands far more than she reveals. I merely observe that his lordship has not shown such renewed interest in life since her ladyship's tragic passing. One hopes that whatever circumstances brought you to our door will prove beneficial to all concerned. After Sarah's departure, Cameron stands before the full-length mirror, transformed by fine clothing into someone nearly unrecognizable. The resemblance to the portraits of Countess Isabella throughout the manor has become even more pronounced, creating an effect that is both striking and deeply unsettling. What began as a desperate gamble for survival has evolved into something far more complex and dangerous. Meanwhile, in his private study, Count Belmont paces before the towering windows that overlook the manor's elaborate gardens. The room reflects his scholarly interests, walls lined with leather-bound volumes on history, philosophy, and natural sciences, a massive oak desk covered with correspondence and estate documents, and several glass cases containing geological specimens collected during his university years at Cambridge. But today, all scholarly pursuits have been abandoned in favor of preparing for a conversation that could change the course of his life. On his desk lies a leather portfolio containing documents that most would consider impossible. Marriage contracts, settlement agreements, and legal papers that would elevate Cameron Thorne from servant to spouse in a single stroke of the pen. The Count's reflection in the window glass reveals a man transformed by the previous evening's encounter. His dark hair has been carefully arranged, his clothing pressed to perfection, and most remarkably, his eyes now burn with an intensity that has been absent since Isabella's death. The prospect of reclaiming some measure of happiness has awakened something within him that he thought permanently buried. Your lordship, Jameson announces from the doorway, his usual composure slightly strained. Mr. Thorne awaits your pleasure. Send him in immediately, Count Belmont replies, turning from the window with movements that betray nervous energy barely held in check. Cameron enters the study with hesitant steps, overwhelmed by both the room's grandeur and the intensity of the Count's gaze. The fine clothing provided by Sarah fits perfectly, creating an image of refined gentility that seems almost natural despite humble origins. Please sit. Count Belmont gestures toward one of the leather chairs positioned before his desk. I trust your accommodations proved satisfactory? More than satisfactory, your lordship. Such generosity exceeds anything I might have hoped for. Cameron's voice carries genuine gratitude mixed with obvious confusion about this unexpected treatment. Count Belmont moves around his desk to sit directly across from his guest, studying that familiar face with an intensity that makes Cameron shift uncomfortably. Tell me about yourself, Cameron Thorne. Your family, your background, your circumstances before arriving at Belmont Manor. The question hangs in the air with deceptive casualness, but Cameron recognizes the probe for information that could expose the carefully constructed false identity. I fear my history holds little interest for someone of your position, your lordship. I am simply a young person seeking honest employment after unfortunate circumstances required my departure from previous situations. Indulge me, the Count presses, leaning forward with obvious fascination. Surely you have family somewhere? Parents who worry about your welfare? Siblings who might wonder about your whereabouts? Cameron's hands tighten imperceptibly in the fine fabric of the borrowed clothing. My parents died when I was quite young, your lordship. I have no siblings, no close relations. I am, for all practical purposes, alone in the world. The answer clearly pleases Count Belmont more than it should. A slow smile spreads across his aristocratic features as he rises and moves to the window, gazing out at grounds that have remained unchanged since Isabella walked among the rose gardens. How remarkably fortuitous. You see, Cameron, I find myself in need of someone who can provide companionship as well as assistance with estate matters. I'm not certain I understand, your lordship. Count Belmont turns back to face his guest, and something in his expression causes Cameron's heart to race with alarm. You will, of course, continue to assist with general estate management. However, I also require someone to accompany me to social functions, to serve as my companion in situations where appearing alone would invite unwanted speculation about my continued bachelor status. Cameron's throat constricts as the true nature of this proposition becomes clear. Your lordship, surely you cannot mean. I mean exactly what I have said. Count Belmont returns to his chair, fixing Cameron with a gaze that burns with desperate intensity. You will serve as my companion, my confidant, and... He pauses, reaching for the leather portfolio on his desk. My spouse. The words strike Cameron like a physical blow. Your lordship, you cannot be serious. Such an arrangement would be impossible, improper, and highly beneficial to both parties, Count Belmont interrupts, spreading the prepared documents across his desk. You require security, position, and protection. I require the appearance of having moved beyond my grief. Together, we can provide each other with exactly what circumstances demand. Cameron stares at the legal documents with growing horror, recognizing the implications of what is being proposed. Marriage to Count Belmont would provide safety and security beyond imagination, but it would also trap them in a web of deception that could prove impossible to escape. This resemblance you bear to my late wife, Count Belmont continues, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, is surely no accident of fate. Perhaps the gods have sent you to provide comfort in my darkest hour. Perhaps Isabella herself guides your steps to this very manor. The mention of the dead countess sends ice through Cameron's veins. Your lordship, I cannot allow you to believe that I am some sort of replacement for. You will be whatever I require you to be. Count Belmont's voice turns sharp, revealing the steel beneath his aristocratic courtesy. The choice is simple, Cameron Thorne. Accept my proposal and enjoy a life of luxury, security, and privilege beyond your current station. Or refuse and face whatever dangers drove you to seek employment so far from your native Yorkshire. The threat, delivered with quiet menace, makes clear that this is no mere request but an ultimatum. Cameron realizes with growing desperation that the resemblance to Countess Isabella has created a trap more dangerous than any that prompted the original flight to Belmont Manor. As Count Belmont awaits an answer, his eyes gleam with the fervor of a man who believes he has found a way to resurrect the dead. But he remains blissfully unaware that his carefully chosen companion harbors secrets that will soon threaten to destroy not only his elaborate plans, but the very foundations of his aristocratic world. For in the shadows of great houses, where power meets desperation, the most dangerous propositions often wear the mask of salvation. The chapel of Belmont Manor stands in ethereal beauty beneath the pale November sky, its Gothic spires reaching toward heaven like supplicating hands. Built by Count Adrian's great-grandfather in 1782, the sacred space has witnessed 3 generations of Belmont family ceremonies, but none so strange or desperate as the union about to take place within its hallowed walls. Cameron stands before the ornate mirror in the manor's blue chamber, transformed beyond recognition by Sarah's careful ministrations. The wedding attire, a creation of ivory silk and French lace that once belonged to Countess Isabella, has been altered to perfection, creating an image of ethereal beauty that seems to shimmer with otherworldly grace. The resemblance to the late Countess has become so pronounced that even Sarah occasionally catches her breath, as if witnessing the return of a beloved ghost. You look. Sarah pauses, her experienced fingers making final adjustments to the delicate veil that cascades like morning mist around Cameron's shoulders. Forgive me, but you look exactly as she did on her wedding day. It's as if she has returned to us. Cameron's reflection reveals a person caught between 2 worlds. The desperate fugitive who arrived at Belmont Manor's gates only 3 weeks ago, and this elegant figure who appears ready to step into the role of Countess with disturbing ease. The transformation is so complete that Cameron sometimes struggles to remember which identity represents truth and which mere performance. "Sarah," Cameron whispers, voice barely audible above the chapel bells that have begun their solemn toll. "What if his lordship discovers that I am not? What if he realizes that I cannot possibly fulfill the expectations he has placed upon me?" The older woman's eyes soften with maternal concern. "My dear child, love often creates its own reality. His lordship sees in you what his heart desperately needs to believe exists. Whether that vision aligns with absolute truth matters less than the comfort it provides to a man who has suffered immeasurable loss." A soft knock interrupts their conversation, followed by Jameson's dignified voice. "Begging your pardon, but his lordship awaits in the chapel. The vicar has arrived and all preparations are complete." As Cameron prepares to leave the chamber, Sarah grasps one lace-gloved hand with surprising urgency. "Whatever brought you to our door, whatever secrets you carry, remember this. His lordship has not smiled, truly smiled, since her ladyship's passing. You have given him hope when all seemed lost. That alone makes you a blessing, regardless of any other considerations." The journey from chamber to chapel passes like a dream wrapped in silk and shadows. The manor's corridors, lined with portraits of noble ancestors, seem to whisper ancient secrets as Cameron glides past on feet that barely disturb the Turkish carpets. Each step brings increasing awareness of the magnitude of this deception. Not merely marriage under false pretenses, but the assumption of an identity that could prove impossible to maintain. In the chapel, Count Belmont waits at the altar with barely contained emotion radiating from his aristocratic frame. He has dressed with meticulous care in formal black tailcoat and white silk waistcoat, his dark hair perfectly arranged and his emerald eyes burning with anticipation. The transformation from grieving widower to eager bridegroom appears complete, yet something in his expression suggests awareness that this ceremony represents more than conventional matrimony. The Reverend Dr. Whitmore, who has served as spiritual advisor to the Belmont family for 27 years, stands behind the altar with an expression of profound unease. His weathered features reflect concern about the haste with which this marriage has been arranged, the absence of proper social customs, and most disturbing of all, the bride's uncanny resemblance to the woman he buried just 3 years past. Only a handful of witnesses attend this peculiar ceremony. Jameson and Sarah representing the household staff, Morrison the estate manager, and Dr. Harrison Blackwell, Count Belmont's longtime friend and personal physician. Each face reveals varying degrees of confusion, concern, and barely suppressed alarm at the proceedings they have been commanded to witness. As Cameron approaches the altar, Count Belmont's eyes fill with tears of joy, so profound that several witnesses shift uncomfortably in their seats. His gaze never wavers from that familiar face, now framed by Isabella's wedding veil, creating an illusion so perfect it seems to defy the natural order. "Dearly beloved," Dr. Whitmore begins, his voice betraying reluctance despite professional dignity, "we are gathered here in the sight of God to witness the holy matrimony between Count Adrian Belmont and Cameron Thorne. If anyone knows of any lawful impediment why these two should not be joined in holy wedlock, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." The silence that follows carries weight beyond mere ceremony. Each witness struggles with knowledge that this union violates numerous social conventions, yet none possess information that would legally prevent the marriage from proceeding. "Adrian," Dr. Whitmore continues, using the familiar form of address granted by decades of friendship, "do you take Cameron to be your lawfully wedded spouse, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part?" Count Belmont's response rings through the chapel with conviction that borders on desperation. "I do, with all my heart and soul. I pledge to cherish, protect, and love Cameron as I have loved no other." The vow, clearly intended to invoke memories of Isabella, causes Dr. Blackwell to shift uncomfortably in his pew. As the Count's physician and closest friend, he recognizes dangerous signs of obsessive behavior that could prove harmful to all concerned. "Cameron," Dr. Whitmore turns to the veiled figure with obvious reluctance, "do you take Adrian to be your lawfully wedded spouse, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part?" Cameron's response comes after a pause that seems to stretch into eternity. "I do." The words, spoken in that familiar musical voice, cause Count Belmont to close his eyes in rapture, as if hearing his beloved Isabella speak from beyond the grave. The exchange of rings follows with ceremonial precision. Count Belmont places a magnificent sapphire surrounded by diamonds, Isabella's engagement ring, upon Cameron's finger with trembling hands. The jewel, worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, sits heavy with the weight of substituted identity and borrowed love. By the power vested in me by the Church of England, Dr. Whitmore intones with barely concealed distress, I now pronounce you husband and wife. May God have mercy upon your souls. The final blessing carries ominous undertones that do not escape the assembled witnesses. As Count Belmont lifts the veil to claim his bride's first kiss, the chapel falls into profound silence broken only by the November wind whistling through the ancient stones. The kiss itself lasts longer than propriety suggests appropriate, as if Count Belmont seeks to recapture some essence of his lost love through physical contact with this mysterious substitute. When they finally part, his eyes shine with tears of joy, while Cameron's expression reveals carefully concealed terror at the implications of this moment. My beloved, Count Belmont whispers, his voice thick with emotion. My darling Isabella, Cameron. My darling Cameron. The slip of name, spoken before the assembled witnesses, sends a chill through the chapel that has nothing to do with November weather. Dr. Blackwell exchanges meaningful glances with Jameson, both recognizing that they have just witnessed something far more complex and potentially dangerous than a simple marriage ceremony. As the wedding party files out of the chapel into the gray afternoon light, Cameron struggles with the realization that the elaborate charade has now become legal reality. The gold band and sapphire ring feel like shackles binding them to a role that grows more impossible with each passing moment. That evening, the newlyweds dine alone in the manor's formal dining room, a cavernous space lit by hundreds of candles reflected in crystal and silver. Count Belmont has planned an intimate celebration designed to recreate his first wedding dinner with Isabella, complete with the same menu, the same wine, and the same table settings used 3 years earlier. Are you not pleased with the cuisine, my dear? Count Belmont inquires, noticing that Cameron has barely touched the elaborate meal. I specifically requested cook to prepare Isabella's favorite dishes. I thought you might, that is, I hoped you would appreciate the significance. Cameron forces a smile while internal alarms scream warnings about the dangerous territory this conversation approaches. Everything is lovely, Adrian. I am simply overwhelmed by the day's events. Of course, Count Belmont's eyes soften with understanding. It has been a day of profound transformation for both of us. We have taken the first steps toward healing the wounds that have tormented us both. The pronoun confusion, us both, reveals the depth of Count Belmont's delusion. In his mind, Cameron's arrival has not simply provided companionship, but has somehow restored Isabella herself to his life. The marriage ceremony has only strengthened this dangerous fantasy. Tell me, Count Belmont continues, raising his wine glass in a toast, do you feel her presence as strongly as I do? Do you sense Isabella's spirit blessing our union? Cameron's hand trembles as they lift their own glass, struggling to navigate this conversational minefield without either encouraging delusion or revealing the truth that would destroy everything. I feel that we have honored her memory today. More than honored, Count Belmont insists, his voice rising with emotional intensity. We have restored her to life itself. Through you, through our love, Isabella continues to exist in this world. Death has been defeated by the power of true devotion. As the Count speaks these words with increasing fervor, Cameron realizes with growing horror that this marriage represents not a new beginning, but the assumption of an identity that may prove impossible to escape. The resemblance to Countess Isabella has created a prison of expectations that could prove more dangerous than any physical captivity. But in the shadows beyond the candlelight, where portraits watch with knowing eyes, other secrets stir. Secrets that will soon reveal why Cameron Thorne's resemblance to the late Countess is no mere accident of fate. Winter settles over Belmont Manor with unusual severity, transforming the estate into a crystalline wonderland that seems carved from ice and starlight. 2 months have passed since the peculiar wedding ceremony, and the rhythm of married life has established itself with deceptive tranquility. Yet beneath the surface of domestic harmony, dangerous currents flow with increasing intensity. Cameron has adapted to the role of Count Belmont's spouse with unsettling ease, though the constant performance of borrowed identity exacts a terrible psychological toll. Each morning brings the same elaborate ritual. Sarah arranging golden curls in Isabella's preferred style, selecting from Isabella's extensive wardrobe, and applying subtle cosmetics to enhance the already remarkable resemblance. By afternoon, Cameron often struggles to remember which reflection in the mirror represents truth and which careful construction. Count Belmont, meanwhile, exists in a state of blissful delusion that grows more pronounced with each passing day. He has commissioned the renowned portraitist Sir Edmund Hartwell to create a new painting of Cameron, positioned to perfectly mirror Isabella's wedding portrait. The sessions require Cameron to pose for hours in the exact stance, wearing the identical gown, with expression carefully modulated to match the late Countess's enigmatic smile. "Hold still, my dear," Sir Edmund instructs from behind his easel, his experienced eyes studying Cameron's face with the intensity of a natural philosopher examining a fascinating specimen. "The light at this hour creates the most exquisite effects with your complexion." Cameron maintains the required pose while Count Belmont observes from his favorite chair, radiating satisfaction as he watches his elaborate fantasy take shape in oils and canvas. The portrait session has become his favorite daily entertainment, allowing him to luxuriate in the illusion that he has somehow conquered death itself. "Sir Edmund," Count Belmont inquires with obvious pride, "have you ever encountered a subject whose natural beauty requires so little artistic enhancement?" Cameron possesses the same ethereal quality that made my dear Isabella's portrait such a masterpiece. The artist pauses in his work, setting down his brush with careful deliberation. Sir Edmund has painted nobility throughout England for 3 decades, developing keen instincts about human nature that extend far beyond artistic skill. Something about this commission troubles him deeply, though he struggles to articulate his concerns. "Your lordship," Sir Edmund ventures cautiously, "I must confess that the resemblance between your current spouse and the late Countess exceeds anything I have encountered in my professional career. Such similarities typically suggest family connection, perhaps distant cousins whose bloodlines carry similar features." Count Belmont's expression shifts subtly, revealing a flicker of something that might be alarm before returning to its usual satisfaction. Surely such remarkable resemblance represents divine intervention, rather than mere genealogy. Cameron appeared at precisely the moment when my grief threatened to consume me entirely. What force but destiny could account for such perfect timing? Cameron remains frozen in position, but internal panic races through every nerve. The artist's observation strikes dangerously close to truths that must remain hidden. Any investigation into family connections could expose the carefully constructed false identity that provides the only protection from far more serious dangers. "Of course, your lordship," Sir Edmund concedes diplomatically, though his expression suggests continuing speculation. "I merely observe that nature rarely creates such extraordinary duplications without some underlying cause." That evening, Cameron wanders the portrait gallery in restless contemplation of the day's unsettling conversation. The long corridor contains 3 centuries of Belmont family history, each painting telling stories of wealth, privilege, and aristocratic accomplishment. But tonight, Cameron's attention focuses on one particular section, where Isabella's portrait hangs alongside those of previous countesses. The painting captures Isabella at the height of her beauty, dressed in sapphire silk that matches her remarkable eyes. Her expression combines gentle authority with warmth, suggesting a woman comfortable with her elevated position, yet genuinely concerned about those under her protection. The inscription beneath reads, "Isabella Catherine Belmont, née Worthington, Countess of Belmont, 1821 to 1844, beloved wife and devoted mother." Cameron stops abruptly, reading the inscription again with growing confusion. Mother? Count Belmont has never mentioned children, and no evidence throughout the manor suggests that he and Isabella produced heirs. Yet the portrait's inscription explicitly identifies the late Countess as a mother, raising questions about family members whose existence has been carefully concealed. She was beautiful, was she not? The voice belongs to Dr. Harrison Blackwell, who has approached through the gallery's shadows with the silent steps of someone accustomed to moving through houses of grief. His presence startles Cameron from contemplation of the troubling inscription. "Dr. Blackwell," Cameron recovers composure with effort. "I did not hear your approach." "Forgive the intrusion," the physician replies, though his keen eyes suggest this encounter was deliberately orchestrated rather than accidental. "I often find myself drawn to this gallery when visiting Belmont Manor. The portraits tell such fascinating stories about family histories." Dr. Blackwell moves to stand beside Cameron, his gaze fixed on Isabella's painting with expression that reveals deep knowledge of painful secrets. As Count Belmont's oldest friend and personal physician, he possesses information about the Belmont family that others are not privileged to share. "You seem particularly interested in the inscription," Dr. Blackwell observes with deceptive casualness. Most visitors assume it refers to Isabella's role as stepmother to Adrian's children from a previous marriage, though of course that interpretation would be incorrect. Cameron's carefully controlled expression betrays nothing, but Dr. Blackwell's trained eye detects the slight tension that indicates his words have struck their intended target. I was merely admiring the artist's skill in capturing her personality. Indeed, Dr. Blackwell agrees. Though I suspect you might be more interested in learning about Isabella's daughter, the child whose existence has been so carefully concealed from general knowledge. The words strike Cameron like physical blows, causing a sharp intake of breath that cannot be disguised. Dr. Blackwell's knowing smile confirms that this revelation was intended to provoke exactly such a reaction. Isabella's daughter would be approximately your age now, the physician continues relentlessly. A young woman who disappeared under mysterious circumstances shortly after her mother's tragic death. The resemblance between you and the late Countess suddenly becomes far more explicable when viewed in light of direct familial connection. Cameron's mind races through implications and dangers that multiply with terrifying speed. If Dr. Blackwell has deduced the truth about identity and parentage, how long before others reach similar conclusions? And what does this knowledge mean for the elaborate deception that has provided safety for the past 2 months? Dr. Blackwell, Cameron attempts to deflect suspicion while gathering crucial information. I fear you mistake coincidence for conspiracy. My resemblance to the late Countess, while remarkable, surely represents nothing more than. Your mother was pregnant when she died, Dr. Blackwell interrupts with gentle authority. Though Isabella herself never knew the truth about her condition. The carriage accident occurred before she realized she carried Adrian's child. I was the attending physician who delivered you posthumously, saving your life through emergency procedures that your mother could not survive. The revelation hits with such devastating force that Cameron must grip the gallery's marble railing for support. The carefully constructed false identity begins to crumble as truth emerges from shadows where it has hidden for 3 years. Count Belmont believes his wife died childless, Dr. Blackwell continues, his voice softening with compassion for the shock he has deliberately inflicted. He was traveling on business when the accident occurred and remained unconscious from his own injuries during the emergency delivery. By the time he recovered, you had been placed with trusted servants who were instructed to raise you away from Belmont Manor to protect you from the complications that might arise from your uncertain legal status. Cameron stares at Isabella's portrait with new understanding, seeing familiar features reflected not through coincidence, but through inherited bloodline. The resemblance that has made this elaborate deception possible exists because Cameron is Isabella's own child, Count Belmont's daughter, unknowingly returned to claim her birthright through marriage rather than inheritance. The servants who raised me, Cameron whispers, voice barely audible above the winter wind rattling the gallery's ancient windows. What happened to them? Dr. Blackwell's expression grows grim. Thomas and Mary Thorne, a groundskeeper and his wife who served the Belmont family for many years. They died in a house fire last autumn, leaving you without protection or legitimate means of support. I assume that tragedy prompted your desperate journey to seek employment at your father's estate. The truth about Cameron's identity creates a web of complications that threaten to destroy everything built over the past 2 months. Marriage to Count Belmont is not merely inappropriate, but represents unconscious incest that would horrify all concerned if discovered. Yet revealing the truth would expose Count Belmont to scandal that could destroy his social position and possibly his sanity. Why tell me this now? Cameron asks, struggling to process implications that multiply with each revelation. What do you hope to accomplish by exposing these secrets? Dr. Blackwell turns from Isabella's portrait to study Cameron's face with the careful attention of someone confirming final details of a long-held theory. Because your father's obsession with replacing Isabella grows more dangerous each day. He refuses to see you as an individual, instead projecting his late wife's identity onto someone he believes can resurrect her from the grave. Such delusion threatens both your welfare and his remaining grip on sanity. As Dr. Blackwell's words sink into consciousness, Cameron realizes that the elaborate deception has evolved into something far more complex than simple survival strategy. The marriage to Count Belmont represents not just fraud, but unconscious reunion between father and daughter, complicated by grief-induced madness that prevents recognition of the truth. But in the depths of Belmont Manor, where family secrets hide behind locked doors and sealed documents, an even darker truth awaits discovery, one that will transform understanding of everything that has transpired within these ancient walls. The library of Belmont Manor becomes a sanctuary of revelation as Cameron sits surrounded by leather-bound journals, family documents, and yellowed correspondence that Dr. Blackwell has quietly provided. 3 days have passed since the shocking disclosure of true parentage, and each new piece of evidence confirms the devastating reality. Cameron Thorne is Isabella Catherine Belmont, daughter to the woman whose identity has been assumed and unknowing wife to her own father. By flickering candlelight, Cameron reads Isabella's private diary, discovering the voice of the mother never known. The entries, written in elegant script with violet ink, reveal a woman of remarkable intelligence, compassion, and growing concern about disturbing changes in her husband's behavior during the final months of her life. October 15, 1844. Adrian's grief over his father's recent death manifests in ways that cause me considerable alarm. He speaks of preserving our bloodline through measures that seem to border on obsession. Yesterday, I discovered him in the portrait gallery, speaking to his ancestors' paintings as if they could respond to his concerns about family legacy. October 28, 1844. Dr. Blackwell visited today under the pretense of a social call, but I suspect Adrian summoned him due to concerns about my health. I have not felt entirely well lately, though I attribute this to the stress of managing estate affairs while Adrian retreats increasingly into private contemplations that exclude me entirely. November 3, 1844. I have made a disturbing discovery in Adrian's private study. Among his papers, I found documents outlining plans for preserving the Belmont lineage that include detailed genealogical charts tracing bloodlines back 6 generations. His fascination with heredity and family resemblance has become an unhealthy fixation that frightens me more than I dare admit. Cameron pauses in reading, recognizing patterns of obsessive behavior that have only intensified in the years since Isabella's death. Count Belmont's fixation on family resemblance and bloodline preservation explains his immediate fascination with Cameron's appearance and his desperate desire to believe that destiny guided their meeting. The diary continues with increasingly troubled observations. November 10, 1844. Adrian presented me with a locked box containing what he called family treasures that must be preserved for future generations. When I asked to examine these treasures, he became agitated and claimed that some secrets require protection until the proper time for their revelation. His behavior grows more erratic daily. November 12, 1844. I suspect I may be with child, though I have not yet informed Adrian of this possibility. Given his current mental state and obsession with family continuation, such news might push him toward actions that could prove dangerous for all concerned. Dr. Blackwell has agreed to confirm my condition discreetly. The final entry, dated November 15, 1844. The day before the fatal carriage accident, chills Cameron's blood with prophetic dread. The locked box Adrian guards so carefully has been moved to the secret chamber behind the library's hidden panel. I fear he plans to reveal its contents soon, claiming that our unborn child must understand the true nature of Belmont family dedication. His words carry undertones that suggest family secrets far darker than mere genealogical pride. If anything should happen to me, may God protect my child from whatever legacy Adrian believes must be preserved. Cameron closes the diary with trembling hands, recognizing that Isabella's fears about hidden family secrets extend beyond her husband's grief-induced obsession. The mysterious locked box mentioned repeatedly in her final entries remains hidden somewhere within Belmont Manor, containing knowledge that Isabella considered dangerous enough to warrant secrecy, even from her own husband. A soft scratch at the library door interrupts these disturbing reflections. Sarah enters carrying a silver tray laden with tea and delicate pastries, her expression revealing the concern that has grown more pronounced since Cameron's true identity became known to a select few household members. Begging your pardon, Sarah sets the tray on a small table near Cameron's chair, but his lordship has been asking for you. He wishes to discuss plans for Christmas celebrations and seems quite excited about creating new traditions that honor both you and her late ladyship's memory. The reminder of Count Belmont's continuing delusions strikes Cameron with fresh horror. How long can this elaborate deception continue before the truth emerges with devastating consequences for everyone involved? Sarah, Cameron ventures carefully, in your years of service to this household, did you ever hear mention of a locked box that Count Belmont kept hidden? Something containing what he called family treasures. Sarah's expression shifts subtly, revealing knowledge she has carefully concealed. There are many family artifacts stored throughout the manor, my dear. Some in obvious locations, others in places known only to his lordship, and perhaps Dr. Blackwell. But this particular box, Cameron presses, something that caused Isabella concern during her final weeks. She wrote about it being moved to a secret chamber behind the library. The older woman's composure falters entirely, confirming that she possesses crucial information about the mysterious family secrets. Perhaps it would be best if certain family matters remained undisturbed. Some knowledge brings more pain than illumination. Sarah, I must know the truth about my family's history. Dr. Blackwell has revealed that I am Isabella's daughter, but there are clearly other secrets that everyone conspires to keep hidden. If I am to understand my place in this household, I need complete honesty about what Isabella discovered before her death. Sarah struggles visibly with conflicting loyalties before making a decision that will change everything. Very well. But what I show you must remain secret until you decide how to proceed with such dangerous knowledge. Leading Cameron to the far end of the library, Sarah demonstrates how to manipulate a specific sequence of carved roses on one of the wooden panels. The mechanism, crafted with ingenious precision, reveals a narrow chamber hidden behind the library's false wall. Inside the secret space sits an ornate rosewood box secured with an elaborate silver lock. The craftsmanship speaks of considerable age and expense, while the lock mechanism appears designed to resist all attempts at unauthorized opening. Surrounding the box, additional documents and artifacts suggest this chamber has served as a repository for family secrets spanning multiple generations. Isabella discovered this chamber shortly before her death, Sarah explains in hushed tones. She became convinced that the box contained evidence of family practices that violated both law and moral decency. Her attempts to convince his lordship to destroy whatever the box contained led to terrible arguments during her final weeks. Cameron lifts the heavy box, surprised by its substantial weight. Whatever secrets lie within have been protected by lock and hidden chamber for nearly 3 years, but Isabella's diary suggests their revelation could threaten everything Count Belmont holds dear about his family's reputation. Do you know what the box contains? Cameron asks, examining the intricate lock mechanism that shows no sign of damage despite its obvious age. Rumors only, Sarah admits reluctantly. Documents, photographs, perhaps physical evidence of practices that the Belmont family has engaged in for generations to preserve what they consider the purity of their bloodline. Isabella believed such practices violated natural law and threatened the family's moral standing. The implications strike Cameron with dawning horror. Family bloodline preservation through practices that violate natural law could only mean one thing. The Belmont family has engaged in deliberate intermarriage between close relatives to maintain their aristocratic features and inherited wealth. The resemblance between family members that Count Belmont celebrates as evidence of superior breeding might actually result from generations of calculated incest. If Isabella was right about the contents, Cameron whispers, staring at the locked box that holds proof of family practices too horrific to contemplate, then my marriage to Count Belmont represents not just unconscious incest, but continuation of a tradition that has defined the Belmont family for generations. Sarah nods gravely. Perhaps now you understand why Dr. Blackwell insists that your father's obsession with family resemblance extends beyond grief for his lost wife. Count Belmont may have recognized your true parentage from the moment you arrived, using marriage to bind you to the family while maintaining the appearance of conventional behavior. The possibility that Count Belmont knowingly married his own daughter while concealing his recognition of her identity adds new dimensions of horror to an already impossible situation. If true, then every expression of love, every intimate moment, every gesture of marital affection represents calculated manipulation designed to trap Cameron within family traditions that span centuries. As Cameron clutches the mysterious box containing evidence of generational family crimes, the sound of approaching footsteps echoes through the library's main chamber. Count Belmont's voice calls out with the cheerful tone of a man anticipating pleasant conversation with his beloved spouse. My darling Cameron, Sarah mentioned you were researching family history in the library. How delightful that you show such interest in understanding your new family's heritage. The irony of his words strikes like a physical blow as Cameron and Sarah exchange panicked glances. Discovery of the secret chamber and its contents would expose not only Cameron's investigation, but also proof that household members have been conspiring to uncover family secrets that Count Belmont has spent years protecting. But as footsteps draw closer and shadows shift in the candlelight, the greatest revelation still awaits. For for the locked box holds more than evidence of family crimes. It contains the key to understanding why Cameron's arrival at Belmont Manor was not coincidence, but the culmination of a plan that began before Isabella's death. The confrontation comes at last in the depths of Belmont Manor's most sacred space, the family crypt beneath the chapel, where generations of nobility rest in marble splendor and eternal silence. Cameron descends the stone steps carrying the mysterious rosewood box, its weight seeming to increase with each step toward the truth that will either liberate or destroy everything built over the past 3 months. Count Belmont waits among the tombs with an expression of terrible calm, as if this moment represents the culmination of plans laid years in advance. Flickering torchlight casts dancing shadows across the carved angels and heraldic crests that adorn each sepulchre, creating an atmosphere of otherworldly judgment that seems appropriate for the revelations to come. "I have been expecting this conversation," Count Belmont announces, his refined voice echoing among the ancient stones. "Though I confess surprise that it has taken you so long to discover Isabella's hidden chamber and its precious contents." Cameron stops halfway down the crypt steps, clutching the box while studying this man who represents simultaneously father, husband, and architect of an elaborate deception. "You knew. From the moment I arrived seeking employment, you knew exactly who I was." "Of course." Count Belmont moves between the tombs with familiarity born of countless visits to commune with his deceased ancestors. "Did you truly believe your resemblance to Isabella could be explained by mere coincidence?" "I recognized my daughter immediately, though I must admit surprise at your resourcefulness in creating the Cameron Thorne identity." The casual admission strikes Cameron like a physical blow. Every gesture of attraction, every moment of apparent romantic love, every intimate expression of marital devotion has been performed with full knowledge that he courted his own child. The magnitude of manipulation and psychological violation exceeds anything Cameron had imagined possible. Then the marriage. Cameron struggles to process implications that multiply with terrifying speed. "Everything between us was calculated deception designed to bring you home where you belong," Count Belmont interrupts with passionate intensity. "You are Isabella Catherine Belmont, rightful heir to everything our family has built over 6 centuries. Your mother's death could not be allowed to sever the bloodline that represents the pinnacle of English aristocratic achievement." Cameron descends the remaining steps, drawn toward the truth despite every instinct screaming warnings about the dangers of complete knowledge. Isabella's diary suggests that our family has engaged in practices that violate natural law. The locked box supposedly contains evidence of crimes spanning generations. Count Belmont's eyes gleam with fanatic pride as he gestures toward the elaborate tombs surrounding them. "Crimes? My dear child, you misunderstand the noble purpose that has guided Belmont family decisions for centuries. What lesser minds call crime, we recognize as essential preservation of superior bloodline through careful selection of marriage partners." The euphemistic language cannot disguise the horrific reality it describes. Cameron stares at the family tombs with new understanding, recognizing that each marble monument represents another generation willing to sacrifice conventional morality for the sake of preserving aristocratic features and inherited wealth through deliberate inbreeding. "Open the box," Count Belmont commands, producing an ornate silver key from his waistcoat pocket. "Learn the truth about your heritage and understand why your return to Belmont Manor represents destiny rather than coincidence." Cameron accepts the key with trembling hands, knowing that whatever the box reveals will change everything. The lock mechanism, crafted with ingenious precision, surrenders to the key with barely audible click that seems to echo through the crypt like a gunshot. Inside the rosewood box, carefully preserved documents tell the complete story of 6 centuries of calculated family manipulation. Marriage records reveal union after union between brothers and sisters, cousins and second cousins, uncles and nieces, all designed to concentrate aristocratic bloodlines and preserve inherited features that mark the Belmont family as superior to common nobility. Photographs dating back to the early days of camera technology show family groups where resemblance between different generations appears almost supernatural. Children who could be twins of their grandparents, siblings whose faces mirror each other with disturbing precision, and couple after couple whose marriage portraits reveal the unmistakable signs of close family relationship. "The first Count Belmont established our family tradition in 1203, Count Belmont explains with obvious pride, watching Cameron examine centuries of documented evidence. He recognized that diluting noble blood with common breeding would ultimately destroy everything aristocracy represents. Each generation since has honored that wisdom by selecting marriage partners who strengthen rather than weaken our superior heritage. Among the photographs, Cameron discovers images that stop the heart entirely. Pictures of Isabella at various ages, each showing her identical resemblance to other women throughout Belmont family history. The similarity extends beyond normal family resemblance into territory that suggests Isabella herself was the product of the same careful breeding practices that produced every previous generation. "Your mother was my cousin," Count Belmont reveals with casual matter-of-factness that makes the admission even more horrifying. "The daughter of my father's brother, raised specifically to become my wife and continue our family's noble tradition." Her beauty and intelligence represented the perfect culmination of 6 centuries of selective breeding. The revelation explains Isabella's extraordinary resemblance to previous generations of Belmont women, while confirming that Cameron's parents were themselves the product of deliberate family intermarriage. The bloodline concentration has reached levels that would produce offspring bearing almost supernatural similarity to their ancestors, including Cameron's uncanny resemblance to the mother never known. But Isabella discovered the truth, Cameron whispers, remembering diary entries that revealed growing horror at her husband's family obsession. She realized what our family represented and tried to escape the cycle. Count Belmont's expression darkens with memories of arguments that preceded his wife's death. Isabella developed romantic notions about marrying for love rather than bloodline preservation. She threatened to expose our family traditions to authorities who would not understand the nobility of our purpose. Her death, while tragic, prevented scandal that could have destroyed everything our ancestors built. The casual reference to Isabella's death as preventing scandal raises terrible questions about whether the carriage accident was genuinely accidental. Cameron stares at this man who represents father, husband, and potentially mother's murderer, recognizing that the web of family crimes may extend far beyond deliberate intermarriage. The second secret, Cameron realizes with dawning horror, isn't just that our family has practiced incest for generations. It's that you arranged Isabella's death to prevent her from exposing the truth. Count Belmont's silence confirms the accusation more effectively than any denial. He moves among the family tombs with the confident steps of someone who believes history will vindicate his actions, regardless of conventional moral judgment. "Isabella's carriage accident occurred on a road I knew she would travel," he admits with chilling calm. Ensuring that her opposition to family tradition could not threaten future generations required decisive action. Her death preserved not only our family secrets, but also made possible your eventual return to claim your rightful inheritance. The confession strikes Cameron with devastating force. Every aspect of identity, every relationship, every moment of the past 3 months has been orchestrated by someone willing to commit murder to preserve family traditions that span 6 centuries. The marriage to Count Belmont represents not just unconscious incest, but union with the man who killed Cameron's mother to prevent exposure of family crimes. "You planned everything." Cameron struggles to process the magnitude of manipulation involved. Isabella's death, my placement with the Thorne family, even their deaths in the house fire that forced me to seek employment. All of it designed to eventually bring me back to Belmont Manor. The house fire was particularly ingenious, Count Belmont agrees with obvious satisfaction. Thomas and Mary Thorne had served their purpose by raising you away from Belmont Manor during the years when your resemblance to Isabella might have aroused unwanted speculation. Once you reached maturity, their continued existence represented a liability that required elimination. Cameron stares at this monster who wears the face of beloved father and devoted husband, recognizing that escape from Belmont Manor may prove impossible. Count Belmont has demonstrated willingness to commit murder to preserve family secrets, and Cameron's knowledge of his crimes makes survival increasingly unlikely. "Now you understand your true heritage," Count Belmont continues, approaching with movements that seem both paternal and predatory. "You are the culmination of 6 centuries of noble breeding, the perfect synthesis of aristocratic bloodlines that represent the finest achievement of English civilization. Your children will continue this glorious tradition, ensuring that Belmont family superiority survives for future generations." The reference to children clarifies Count Belmont's ultimate purpose. Cameron's return to Belmont Manor was never intended as simple reunion between father and daughter, but as continuation of family breeding practices that require the production of offspring to carry concentrated bloodlines into the next generation. As Count Belmont reaches toward the rosewood box to reclaim the evidence of family crimes, Cameron makes a desperate decision that will determine whether the truth about 6 centuries of calculated evil remains hidden forever. The box, heavy with its burden of documented horrors, swings in a perfect arc that connects with Count Belmont's temple with sickening force. The impact sends him crashing into Isabella's marble tomb, his aristocratic head striking the carved angel that watches over his wife's remains with ironic justice. Blood spreads across white marble as Count Belmont's body settles into unnatural stillness, his emerald eyes staring sightlessly at the family crests that celebrate centuries of noble achievement built upon foundations of unspeakable crime. Cameron stands among the tombs clutching evidence of family horrors, finally free from the web of manipulation that began before birth. The rosewood box and its contents represent proof that could expose 6 centuries of Belmont family crimes, but also knowledge that would destroy innocent servants who have unknowingly participated in maintaining the elaborate deception. In the flickering torchlight, surrounded by the remains of generations who sacrificed conventional morality for aristocratic superiority, Cameron faces the ultimate choice. Reveal the truth about Belmont family practices and destroy everyone connected to the estate, or preserve the secrets while ensuring they die with the last heir to a bloodline that should never have survived this long. Outside the crypt, winter winds howl through Belmont Manor's ancient stones like the voices of countless victims crying for justice that may never come. But within the sacred darkness where noble lies rest beside family truths, one young person holds the power to finally break a cycle of evil that has persisted for 600 years. The double secret of Count Belmont Manor stands revealed at last. Not only has the family practiced deliberate incest for generations, but they have committed murder to preserve traditions that violate every principle of human decency. Cameron Belmont, no longer Cameron Thorne, possesses both the evidence and the authority to ensure such horrors never again darken English soil. Yet as dawn approaches over the frozen estate, questions remain about whether justice can be achieved without destroying innocent lives, and whether some family secrets are too dangerous to reveal even when their exposure might prevent future crimes. In the silence of the crypt, where Count Adrian Belmont lies motionless beside his wife's tomb, the final chapter of this dark legacy begins to write itself in blood and shadow, with only time revealing whether truth or silence will ultimately triumph over 6 centuries of carefully concealed evil. Thus ends the tale of Belmont Manor, where love and horror intertwined like roses and thorns, and where the greatest secrets often hide behind the most beautiful facades. In the grand traditions of noble houses, some truths prove too terrible for daylight, while others demand revelation regardless of consequence. What price justice when innocence and guilt share the same bloodline? What cost freedom when truth threatens to destroy both perpetrator and victim alike? These questions linger in the corridors of power, where family honor and human decency wage eternal war for dominion over hearts that harbor both angel and demon. And so we leave Cameron Belmont, heir to a legacy of shame yet architect of hope, standing at the crossroads between vengeance and mercy, with the fate of countless souls resting in hands that have known both love and violence, both deception and truth. The future remains unwritten, but the past speaks volumes about what humanity can become when nobility of birth overshadows nobility of spirit. May the shadows of Belmont Manor serve as warning to all who would sacrifice conscience for comfort, and may the price paid by those who dared to love across the boundaries of convention remind us that some bonds transcend even the deepest sins.